Thanks for inviting me, and thank you, Andy. And for those of you who do not know, Andy is in Canada, and it's quite late at night. So when initially I was requested to request Andy for his talk, for his time, I was hesitating, and I hesitatingly asked Andy about it, and he was more than happy to take part. He said, "No, no, that's no problem. I will do it." So I think. A wonderful gesture from his side to match up to what the team is doing in India. Thank you, Andy. And we have another colleague apart from Ravi Kiran, also from Europe, who woke up early on a Saturday. Robert, whom you will hear right after me. Thank you, Robert, as well. Thanks, Ravi, for joining. I just take about 8 minutes to talk on this topic, and then we can go to the next one. So this is a little video I want to share, and it summarizes where we are today. So usually people miss it, so I'm playing again. So the reason I showed this is because basically this is a wake-up call. So many of us are in the state where we think, yeah, things were different in 2019, even in beginning of 2020, and in sooner than later it will come back to the same way. Maybe not exactly the same way. In my words, the what will remain the same, but the how might change. And in that sense, it's a good wake-up call for many of us in many ways, if you make the best use of it and come out in flying colors. So the topic I was asked to speak on was the future of employment in terms of should I be an entrepreneur, should I be an employee? I think there is no one answer. Everybody cannot be employees, everybody cannot be entrepreneurs, but you need to figure out a little bit of understanding and experiment, and then see what is most suitable for you. But having said that, there are some anchors that you can use to do that decision making. Education, of course, it's the first and foremost building block that we need to understand. And with that comes experience. So once we get to our degrees and masters and so on, we can start to work and get build experience for ourselves. And with that, we develop certain amount of expertise over the years. So in this 4E model, which I'll come to, education is one, experience is the other, expertise. So this all will take time. So you can more or less say the x-axis is time in this case. But once you have education and you can build some experience, you can become a good employee, right? Employees have lower risk compared to an entrepreneur, a more stable, more predictable. Somebody else in the organization always tries to make the decisions for you and so on. But with some more experience, you can become a better employee or a more valued employee or more significant employee in a company. But with experience, you can also become an entrepreneur. Like I said, the major difference is you get to make all the decisions. And if you like that, it is good. And if you don't like that, it is not good. Employee, you can take leave, you can take holiday, you can take vacation more easily than an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur, you are basically 24/7. Robert is going to talk about it. Ravi can talk about it. Andy can vouch for it. There is nothing called off time for an entrepreneur. If the housekeeping doesn't come to your office, you have to make sure the office is clean, which means you could be cleaning the office, right? So anything to everything, you have to get it done, especially when you're starting up and when you're small. So with more experience, typically it is found that there are more successful entrepreneurs who are experienced rather than fresh ones. It's not to discourage anyone, but it is proven by data that some experience always helps because it helps in making you better decisions. The third piece is expertise. So as an employee, as an entrepreneur, you can still build expertise. And the last bit which you can become is a consultant. Consultant is one who has a lot of experience, quite a good education, and more importantly, expertise in a particular area for which he or she is being sought after. So obviously you can think and understand that expertise is not the first thing you do after college, right? That can still be. So when you think of entrepreneur, it's different. You're responsible in managing other people. Consultant is a kind of entrepreneur who is managing maybe less than 2, 3 people, perhaps sometimes only himself or herself, right? So you can be a group bunch of consultants, you can be a single consultant. So whether you want to call it an entrepreneur or not, you're on your own. But that comes with some expertise, which I was talking to somebody today also in the morning, that when you do something very well, and when you somehow manage to be in the top three, you can be a good consultant. You can be a sought after consultant because people should come to you for something which they don't get otherwise. Okay. So education, experience, and expertise are the three E's, which can get you an employee or help you become an entrepreneur or become a consultant. Now there is a fourth variation, which is called intrapreneur, right? And that becomes an advantage for people who want less risk but a flavor of entrepreneurship. So intrapreneur, if you today type in Microsoft Word, it says it's a spelling mistake, and it is not. It's a well-researched topic. A lot of things are going on in this area, which is basically a company allows you to operate like an entrepreneur, but within the company. So if you compare what we discussed as employee and entrepreneur, employee is very stable, very safer. Entrepreneur is quite risky. Everything is on. Intrapreneur is, as I've mentioned in the slide, is in between. There's a higher degree of risk compared to an employee, but the lower degree of risk compared to an entrepreneur because the funds are given by the company many times. The resources are given by the company. Maybe some decisions are also made by some of the higher ups, but it gives you a flavor of being not completely safe, but not completely on your own and risky, but somewhere in between. But the fourth E, if you're wondering which is the fourth E in the 4E model, education, experience, and expertise, is exposure. That's where what Andy talked about makes sense, and you as TEMS ambassadors make sense to you. This will not come from education. This will not come from experience. This will not come because you are an expert in something. This will come from exposing yourself to people, a wide variety of people. Just look at today. We have myself, we have Andy, we have Ravi Kiran, we have Robert, and we have Dr. Ruchi. Now, all of us are very different in what we do. Now, you don't get to meet these people just because you're in TEMS, you're able to meet such wonderful people, right? And that is what exposure. You don't know what you don't know is reduced by exposing yourself to people and listening to topics that is not taught to you in school and college and at work. When I say, for example, if you read books, don't read books in your area of expertise. Read books, suppose if you are in mechanical engineering, read books in finance, read books in strategy. So that's how you get exposed to new things, because then the boundary of what you know starts to extend. And that's the beauty of TEMS is you get to meet really wonderful people and literally across the world. Just yesterday, I made a connect at Panama, a student like you who wants to run a part of the industrial forum with us. And that's the beauty of being an ambassador or being a part of TEMS as such. So education, experience, expertise, and exposure. Exposure is the key because it's a kind of multiplier. It speeds up everything, it accelerates your learning, it accelerates your experience, it accelerates and expands your networking, and hence you can very well become a well sought after and well educated, well-rounded professional. Now, if you look, it's an interdisciplinary exposure that we're talking about. So classically, we said there is the horizontal blue line is the width of education that we get. Typically, say undergraduate or masters in electronics and communication, for example, or computer science, and so on and so forth. So you get an orange line in that, which is your supposed to be an area of specialization. But in interdisciplinary exposure, by design, you don't do this. You do this instead. You have a range of topics, and you have a very depth of expertise in each of them. For example, I'm a systems engineer for a big part of my career. So I knew hardware, I knew software. I knew hardware more than software. And I knew systems, I knew product management, I knew picture performance, are different topics. Now, that's where TEMS plays a role because as the topic says, technology and engineering management, we say everything that is needed to make a product or a service, right? Leaders enabling product and services for good. So we know the end in mind is good. Good for whom? Good for humanity. And whatever needs to happen between the head and good, we make it happen. And that's the future of skills as well. And that's where you need to be adaptive in your skill set as well. So there's a lot of stuff on TEMS TV. I just took some old snapshot of what was there. There is much more content here. Perhaps Ravi can touch about it, which you can talk about. But there is enough and more to learn and be, helping yourself to understand a little bit more about expertise. So that's basically what I wanted to share. Remember, education, expertise and your experience together with exposure makes you what you want to. When you meet people, you get to emulate them, you get to learn from them, you get to ask them, and that's how you learn. Okay. Thank you so much, Divya. I'm handing you back the screen.
Thank you so much, sir. We have one question by the Visat Shah. It is good time to have a startup in this current situation.
Um, okay, my philosophy is very simple. Let me give you a small anecdote. In the 80s, people used to say it's very difficult to find a job after education. In the 90s, they told it's very difficult to get a job after education. 2000, they said the same. 2010 and 2020, they are saying the same. I say if you are good in something, there is always a job for you. So even the same applies for startup. There is more support today, yes. So if you have, that doesn't make the quality of your proposal, the business idea that you have, that does not take away from that. And just not to discourage you, but you should know the facts in being a startup is 90 to 95% of the startups don't make it. And one of the prime reasons is they build what nobody wants. So if you have a good idea, yes, it's a very good time to do a startup and scale as well.
Thank you so much, sir. We have one more question from Manan Joshi. Sir, can you just brief us more about an entrepreneur, just like giving an example?
Okay, entrepreneur is like this. Suppose I am working for, I'll just take a name. I have no space. Okay, let me take Philips because we work with and Robert also worked with. So when I'm working with Philips, suppose I come up with an idea to make a product. So it's like a handheld CT scanner. Okay, it doesn't exist today, so I'm making up one. And now I go to my management. They say, I do my homework. I say, this is how the idea works. This is the amount of money it takes, but this is a benefit that we have. This is a business case and everything. Suppose my management sort of likes that idea and say they want to invest in it. Now, two things can happen. If they reject, I can resign from the job, go out and start a startup because I believe in it. Now, when the management believes in it, they give me support. They say, okay, we'll support you. We will relieve you of your current duties. We'll give you time to do this. It will be funded by us. You can run it as a business, separate business. And if it grows big, then it will be a business unit by itself. Maybe that's the way you can understand entrepreneurs. So they groom entrepreneurs within the organization because that gives them the freedom to operate compared to a regular business. But they also have a risk that it might not work, and the company understands that. I know of companies, bigger multinational companies, who have gone one step further. They said, you know what, we like this idea, we will support you. Why don't you take it as a business startup and you start up within our company and you can have a 50% stake in it. You can put some money and you take a stake in it as well. So that's what entrepreneur essentially is.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, can you highlight the funding opportunities for startup?
Money has never been a problem, especially in the last 4 years. I mean, like Andy said, he himself is an investor, and across the globe they do that. So there is always, just think like this: when you go to a businessman and you give them an idea how to grow their business or make their business better, any reasonable businessman will see sense and invest in you. The question is always, do they see value as much as you see value in it? When we start up, we find it more attractive than person who has to invest. When you or me have to buy a 10 rupees toothpaste, we think before we buy, right? So same way an investor thinks what is the value. So if you create value, there is enough people who can invest in your startup.
Okay, sir. So similar kind of question by Deepna Garg. Funding opportunities for projects.
Yes, like I said, if you have an idea which helps a business, no reasonable businessman will say no to it. There is nobody who says, I don't want my business to grow. So you have to think from the business investor's perspective, why and what they would invest for, and you will get the benefits of investing.
Thank you so much, sir, for patiently answering all the questions and for this enlightening talk. Hope it
Thank you.
would be helpful to all the participants to make the right choice for their career. Now
Thank
let's march further in this event. Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much by Helen Keller. Now it's time to get the information regarding IEEE TEMS and how it can prove to be a golden opportunity. So get ready for the next informative session, Digital Transformation and TEMS, a Global Opportunity, which is going to be conducted by Robert Beerwolf. Mr. Robert Beerwolf is the president of the conference at IEEE TEMS and the research associate at the Center of Technology and Innovation Management. Now,